in one of the biggest games of the year, besides the Super Bowl. To get to the Super Bowl, there should be no controversy on these calls. There should be like 10 different angles and interpretations that they should have. Welcome to episode 264 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench podcast network. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. We are back for another week of action-packed sports or news in the world of sports. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench podcast network, youtube.com/ETB network. We are at 905 subscribers currently as I checked. We are very close to 1,000 subscribers. Please help by hitting the subscribe button. It's that twirling rainbow button or whatever they do now. When you say the word subscribe, it's there. So please check that out. If you can't watch on the video side, listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, Acast, anywhere, YouTube Premium. The audio is available, so please go check that out if you can't watch. Also, Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. We came off doing a bunch of things on Playback. We had the College Football National Championship on there. We did some of the semifinal games. So like I said, playback.tv/ETB network. Join our community. We're going to be doing a bunch of other things coming up. A lot of NBA coming up. Baseball will be coming in spring training very soon, about a month. So just tune into our social medias at ETB Network to find out more. All right, Anthony, we have a lot to get to, a lot of NFL to get to because we are deep in the thick of it, of the NFL playoffs. The tale of two different stories in the championship game. You had the real game, in my opinion, which had some controversy to it. And then you have the game where I'm sure everyone is going to be more surprised about the score. So we have that. We have a lot of NFL coaching news, some shocking, some not so shocking. We're going to talk about Jimmy Butler again, because why not? Because he just ends up in the news all over again. And then Kobe Bryant, 5th-year anniversary of the helicopter crash that he unfortunately passed away. I can't believe it's been 5 years. That's kind of a shocking number in itself. So a lot to get into in roughly an hour or so. So let's get to it. Let's start with your Bills in the AFC Championship game. Chiefs beat the Bills 32-29, but this doesn't go without a ton of controversy.
Yeah, I definitely want to say first and foremost, I love doing this show and I love talking about sports, but if there was ever a topic in a show that I wouldn't want to do, it would be this one right here. But can't pick and choose, and it doesn't work that way. You got to take the good with the bad. And, I can't be that disappointed. We did make it further than most teams do. I mean, how many teams get to make it to the Final Four? But when you talk about this game, I mean, obviously – the Bills and Chiefs, it's always, very close coming down to the end. And there's always a couple plays that if it goes one way or another, it'd be a completely different outcome. And it's almost like it's becoming easy to predict. I mean, I said it on Football Forecast that this game was going to be super close. It was going to come down into the fourth quarter. Allen was going to put his cape on, play Superman, play a great game. And then there was going to be a mistake by the Bills, whether if that was a fumble or a collapse or a drop. I think it was a mixture of two. I think the Bills' defense completely collapsed throughout the game. And then I also think the Kincaid drop factored in as well. But obviously, there's a lot to dissect. You obviously got to start off with the goal line situation. Now, it did look like Allen did get the first down, but it's definitely hard to tell. So I can't get too upset about it. I know certain people and certain officials have certain angles that some, like us on watching TV, don't have. So maybe we can see things that they can't. To me, it looked like a first down. The rules expert on TV, to him, thought it was a first down. But I can see why others may not think it. But, man, that changed the outcome of the game because that would have been huge. The Bills would have obviously got the first down. They could have went down the field and scored and been up by 8 points. Instead, the Chiefs take the ball and go down the field, score, and get a two-point conversion of themselves. The Christian Benford injury early on really killed the Bills. You could see as soon as Kamar Elam went in the game, they were targeting him. He was giving up multiple penalties, and he was getting burned by pretty much any receiver he was on. Whether if it was Hopkins or Xavier Worthy, they were burning him. And it's just unfortunate because the Bills don't have great depth at the cornerback position, and Benford being their best corner, that's a huge loss. I also want to shout out Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for Kansas City. I mean, if that guy's not the best defensive coordinator in football, I don't know who is. I mean, that guy puts on a master display. And, it's crazy because McDermott, the defensive coach for the Bills, I feel like Steve Spagnuolo is a lot better of a coach than he might be. There's a lot of coaching mistakes that McDermott possibly made in this. And at the end of the day, I think what the Bills are in is in a tough position where you have a great team, you have a top 10 head coach in McDermott, you have a good GM. But at the end of the day, they're never going to be better than Andy Reid, and they're never going to be better than Steve Spagnuolo. And it's unfortunate because I do think Allen is just as good as Pat Mahomes. I think if Josh Allen was in Kansas City, he'd be winning Super Bowls. And if Mahomes is in Buffalo, he'd be coming up short as well. But, it was a rebuild for Buffalo. Everybody thought after losing Stephon Diggs and everybody else that the season would be over and that they probably wouldn't make the playoffs or get knocked out early on. They were able to beat the Ravens and get all the way to the AFC Championship game. So I think this was a huge year for the Bills, and I think they're only going to get better. But it goes to show you that at the end of the day, the Kansas City Chiefs are still the team to beat, and until someone knocks them off, it's going to have to stay that way.
Now, let's go back to that 4th and inches play, because that play was just, first of all, you bring up the rules analyst. For most people who don't 100%, you and I know it, but for people who don't pay attention to analysts and who's calling the game, Gene Steratore was the rules analyst during the game. And for most people who don't remember, that's kind of when the measurements were not done perfectly. And he pulled out an index card to make a measurement on a call. And that was the biggest joke for years. It's still a joke that's made for years. Here's the problem, though. When you look at the play and they show it on TV, you can't see where that football is at all. There's no way. Like, anyone who says that that's an obvious call, I don't think it's an obvious call, but they need better replay angles to get that call right. I heard that the TV replays are better than what the refs have to look at or what the command center has to look at. How can that be? That
should be the other way around.
In one of the biggest games of the year, besides the Super Bowl, to get to the Super Bowl, there should be no controversy on these calls. There should be like 10 different angles and interpretations that they should have. Now, it's tough to say. Now, originally on the field, I don't know if people are going to know this either. Originally, I think they called it a first down. Then they overturned on the field to a turnover on downs. I think the Bills had to challenge the call, right? It wasn't the Chiefs?
No, I think the Bills definitely challenged it. Or it may have been automatically reviewed.
Okay. So I think originally they were going to challenge, and then I think they did a booth review after it. So I just didn't see them changing that. Usually when it's that close, you're going to, and I think I've said this to you before, the biggest frustration I have is when they say a call stands. Now, I don't know if you know where I'm coming from when I say I have frustration with that terminology, because that's basically a cop-out that they don't want to make a call. I don't know if you see it that way. Do you see it that way or no?
I mean, honestly, I don't. I mean, I feel like if at the end of the day, if the play stands, the play stands. But I agree with you, Nick. I think it was a 50-50 call that could have gone either way. That's why, obviously, I thought he got the first down, but I'm not too upset about it But the one thing that McDermott did try to challenge and lost was the Worthy catch. You know, it looked like that could have been an interception or a catch, but it also looked like when they were coming down, it looked like the ball hit the ground.
Yes.
And one thing that upsets me is it's not like if you want to say that's a catch, fine. If you want to say it wasn't a first down, fine. But what upsets me is you got all these 50-50 calls.
Yes.
But how come in the playoffs and you're playing the Chiefs, how come it becomes 90-10 Chiefs? And that's what upsets me. If they're 50-50, how come it never goes one for the Bills, one for the Chiefs? How come it's 90% for the Chiefs, 10% for the Bills?
And I agree with you because you know right away, and the NFL will never admit it. Commissioner Goodell will never admit it. The whole NFL front office will never admit it. They want the Chiefs to win 3 in a row. That's good marketing for the NFL. They'll never admit it. But I think that was not a catch, number one, for Worthy. I think he dropped that ball, clear and simple. But there was quite a few things where they let the Chiefs have their way and the Bills were not during the game. Now, there's one thing I will say. I'm not a huge fan of McDermott as a head coach. Now, I don't know what Bills fans... I'm sure some Bills fans are frustrated that he can't get over the hump and make it to the Super Bowl because this team can be Super Bowl proven. Like, I think they were a good team. And by the way, you even said it yourself. They made it way further with less this year with all the injuries. And then who was the guy that got injured? You said the cornerback that got injured early in the game.
Christian Benford.
That was a huge injury. I agree with you. When you said it in our chat, like that was a huge injury. It changed the game. So, I don't know. It was a great game. Don't get me wrong. Like, it came down to the end. We all know that Mahomes was going to be... He usually has one of those star drives at the end of a game. Always does. Not that I really want to go back and cause PTSD here, but obviously the 17-second or 15-second drive, which, by the way, will still go down as one of the most historical drives ever to get from like the 15 or the 20 to the end zone. But Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes, regardless. I like Josh Allen. That's not my issue here. I think Josh Allen is a fantastic quarterback. In my opinion, I would take Josh Allen over Lamar for the MVP this year. I think he has earned it way more with less than Lamar with all the weapons. Now, I don't think they take these games into account when they do the MVP, but if you look, how many times did Josh Allen have to use his legs to get a first down or to get the ball moving? Because he doesn't have enough wide receiver weapons. Amari Cooper, who? No one saw him anywhere. They brought him in via trade. He was not really used, right?
Yeah, he really he had a couple catches, but he really was just a rotational piece that really didn't make a huge impact this season.
Right. So this game was great. Like it had a lot of controversy to it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. So now the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl. So now we're going to have to hear all this nonsense about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and all this nonsense. And now we move on to the game that was probably the shocker of the two. The NFC Championship. The Eagles beat the living you-know-what out of the Commanders, 55-23. First of all, I'll ask you right off the bat, did you think 88 points was going to be scored in this game?
No, I didn't think it was going to be that high scoring, especially with how good the Eagles defense was playing. I didn't think it was going to be this many total points. Obviously, the Commanders got a lot of their points when the game was pretty much, out of when it was over. But I think the Eagles, I said coming into this, the Eagles are just a better team. And I know Jaden Daniels, I honestly think for the most part, Jaden Daniels played a good game. I think a lot of the beginning of it, especially in the first 3 quarters, it was his teammates fumbling the ball and his defense that just couldn't make a stop. I think Jaden Daniels did whatever he could, but the Eagles just at the end of the day have the better defense. They have the much more talented offense. And I said coming into this game, I didn't see any way that the Commanders were going to be able to stop Saquon Barkley. And not only Saquon Barkley was able to get going, but I think this was probably one of the better games Jalen Hurts has had in a while. So now you're starting to see Jalen Hurts get better each and every week. He's starting to get a little bit more healthier. I think he made a comment that Nick Sirianni took the straitjacket off a little bit. So the Eagles, right now, roster, I've been saying this since midseason, when Jalen Hurts is healthy, offensive, defensively, this is the most talented team in football. And, obviously Kansas City's Kansas City. Mahomes is always going to give you a chance. Andy Reid, the best coach maybe of all time, is always going to give you a chance. But if you're going on based on talent, the Eagles should be the favorite heading into the Super Bowl.
Wow. That's high praise, by the way, considering that I saw the early spreads. And that's the only reason I'm bringing it up, because I saw it as an early spread, that the Chiefs, of course, are going to be an early spread favorite at 1.5, which I think is a little bold this early on to already have the Chiefs as a favorite. But when I look at this game, Saquon, I knew that the Eagles were going to come out on fire. And then, of course, I think it was the second or third play from scrimmage, he runs for 60 yards and a touchdown. And I said to myself, this is going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day for the Commanders. If he's doing that, and then how long, what was it, 2 or 3 minutes later, he scores another touchdown, from 40 out or something. The guy is a stud. I can't deny it. He's going to get top 3, top 4 votes for MVP, probably.
Oh, of course. And he's definitely going to be the clear-cut winner for Offensive Player of the Year. And, I think if you look in the NFL, of all the players who deserve to win a championship, obviously I'm going to say, because of the heartbreaks that he's dealt with, how great he's played in the playoffs, Josh Allen obviously deserves a Super Bowl more than anybody in the NFL. But if there's a second player on that list, it's definitely got to be Saquon Barkley. I mean, for what he had to put up with playing for the dysfunctional New York Giants organization and still going out there and being a good teammate, a good leader, and still making it about the team and not by himself, even though he couldn't get an offensive line to protect for him. He was getting killed and injured every single year. He was still going out there and being the best teammate he could. And then now he gets to go to a good team, and now he finally gets to have the talent around him. He almost breaks Eric Dickerson's record, and now he's in the Super Bowl. I mean, he's a great guy, and I'm definitely rooting for him. And like I said, outside of Josh Allen, I can't think of another player that deserves to win the Super Bowl more so than I think of Saquon Barkley.
And I'm sure we'll talk more about this. And actually, I can say this now because we have it. We are doing a Super Bowl live stream for the network with a bunch of us from Football Forecast, all our shows. That'll be on February 8th, the day before the Super Bowl, 4 p.m. Eastern. We're allotting 2 hours, but we'll see how long we go with it. But we always do a live stream every year for the last, second to last episode of the football show. But going back to this, Saquon, it all comes down to one thing, and it's the O-line. Having a fantastic O-line, I would say the Eagles have the best O-line in football, and it's not close. And when you have an O-line that you trust to run behind, you're going to take off for 60 yards, or you're going to take off for 40 yards. I think he's had more multi-touchdown games than anybody in the league this year, I think also. So I look at his line, 15 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 in the first quarter. I just said, I know it's over. When it was 14-3, I just said I knew it was over because the Commanders' offense also just looked slow out of the gate. And it seemed like Jaden Daniels had to force a bunch of things early, and the Eagles' defense was too much for the Commanders to wake up. And then it just seemed like every time the Eagles touched the football, they were scoring in some way. I mean, heck, like I said, look at the score, 55-23, 88 total points. Have we had a playoff game that's had 88 total points in it before? I don't think so. So that's got to be a record by far. I would say that's probably a record. Jalen Hurts looked, I'm not going to say great, but he looked better. I think I agree with what you said, though, that he's healthier and with a little more time now with a week off in between, he'll be able to recover. And I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup. What I'm begging for is not what happened 2 years. What was it, 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
It was 2 years ago where the refs got in the middle of the game outcome. If I'm not mistaken, it was a pass interference by the Eagles, right? Which gave the Chiefs the victory. So I hope the refs swallow the whistle. There's too many whistles in, not this game, there's too many whistles in the other game, in my opinion.
I 100% agree, and I really hope that they don't, because I know, obviously, there's jokes about boycotting the Super Bowl. Obviously, people are going to still tune in, and there's going to be a huge viewership. But the NFL, has to at least be on notice that they can't be having referees dictate these games, especially in a Super Bowl like this. One last thing I'll say quickly before we pass on is, as much as I want to see the Eagles win, and like I said, I'm gonna be rooting for them because I hate the Chiefs, and I want to see Saquon Barkley get it, of course. But one thing that kills me and why it kills me to have to root for the Eagles is because I think one group of people that don't deserve it is the Eagles fans.
I agree with you.
There's some good Eagles fans out there, so don't kill me in the comments. There's some good Eagles fans out there.
There are.
For a large part, they might be the most disrespectful fan base out there. I don't know if you saw the video, but there was 2 Commanders fans walking out the stadium. I mean, you guys already won the game. They're just walking to their cars. You got a group of people almost ganging up on them, talking crap, and then you have to go and steal the guy's hat and run off. Like why do that? You guys already won the game. You have to really follow them to the car and steal their hat. I thought that was petty, and I think Eagles fans have a history of being petty and being ignorant. So I don't think they deserve it, but Saquon Barkley does.
I mean, I wouldn't just say Eagles fans. I would say Philly fans are rough in general. Like, you're not into baseball as much as I am, but Philly fans are brutal. Like, they are brutal. And I think Philly fans are they're rough and tough. Not making excuses for them, by the way. Let me be very clear about that. But do you remember? I don't know if we talked about it. I think we did a couple of weeks ago. During the Eagles-Packers game, the fan that was like bugging the Packers fans, and it went viral, that video.
Yep.
So I agree with you. Eagles fans are brutal. Not all of them, because I have some friends who are Eagles fans, by the way. But, I mean, it's the battle of 2 franchises where there is some hate on each side. Now, it's crazy. Like, when I'm at work with other people, I don't want to see the Chiefs. I don't want to see the Chiefs. Enough. Do you realize how hard it is to win 3 in a row? It's really hard. Like, that's history that we've never seen. Like, and I'm going to screw this up again, but how many did the Bills win in a span of 4 or 5 years, or they made it in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, see, the Bills are the most haunted team because they're known as the one franchise to make it to 4 straight Super Bowls. The only problem is they lost in every single one.
That's crazy. Like, that's crazy in itself. But would it have been nice to see like a Bills? Because everyone was saying they wanted to see like Bills Commanders. That's what everyone wanted to see, because that would have had some intrigue in the matchup of Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels. That would have been intriguing. But I think this is the more sensible matchup that everyone was expecting. But the Commanders kind of disappointed me a little bit. And
still at the end of the day, though, they went from the second worst team in the league all the way to the Final Four.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. They had an amazing year by every way, shape, or form. But I was kind of expecting like a little more juice out of the Commanders.
Oh, yeah.
So now we have our Super Bowl matchup, Eagles, Chiefs, in New Orleans. So we'll see. We'll get in. Fly, Eagles, fly. Right. Yeah, Fly, Eagles, fly, and Chiefs Kingdom all in one. So we'll get into the Super Bowl probably because there's a week off in between. And I'm sure you and I will get into that probably next week. But now let's get into the coaching hires, because now the NFL coaching carousel is open. And unfortunately, since I'm going to be tortured, Jets hire Aaron Glenn as their head coach and Darren Mougey as their GM. I think he was the assistant GM of Denver, I think. I'm very confused. Just very, very, very confused. Your offense struggled. It struggled. And you went and you hired Aaron Glenn. I like Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn is the top defensive coordinator in football, except for when the Lions got completely pounced by the Commanders. But I just don't understand the move. And then you hire a no-name GM on top of it. So you're just compounding the issue. And tell me if you see this. You hired the coach before the GM, which is it's supposed to be the other way. You're supposed to hire the GM hires the coach. So I'm confused. What do you think about this?
Well, maybe it's true. Maybe the GM was already there, because maybe the GM of the Jets is Aaron Rodgers. But no, but
that was good.
All jokes aside, though, I think obviously Aaron Glenn, one of the top 2 or 3 defensive coordinators in the NFL. And I think, obviously, the New York Jets, it's been the offense that's been struggling. So I could understand, coming from you as a Jets fan, why you guys really wanted one of those top offensive guys. The only thing is, when they made this hire, I try to think of myself, as a non-Jets fan, what were they thinking? Why would they want to go with Aaron Glenn? What was their reasoning? And the only thing I can think of is the fact that they got so many good pieces on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, when you look at the team right now, the defense is obviously the easiest to repair. Once Robert Saleh went out the door because he was forced out due to Aaron Rodgers, you saw that defense went downhill, and that's when the Jets really collapsed. I mean, at least when their defense was competitive, they're at least, getting close to just missing the playoffs, at least around that 7 to 8 win mark. Once that defense went down, they really couldn't compete. I think because of Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams, they probably feel like if you bring in Aaron Glenn, you're at least guaranteed to have a dominating one side of the ball. You're going to have a top 5 defense guaranteed. If you bring in an offensive guy and he can't fix the offense, well, now you got a really crappy offense and a really crappy defense. So they probably figured they're at least guaranteed to be dominant on one side of the ball, and then just hopefully you could get lucky with an offensive coordinator or a quarterback. But now it's going to be interesting to see. I know they said they're going to try to make a decision sooner rather than later on whether if Aaron Rodgers is going to be a quarterback for this team next season.
I need him gone. I don't want to deal with that headache again. All right, I'm going to go on the Pat McAfee show all year during the NFL season. Like, dude, just play football. Like, stop going on the show. Focus on football. If you want to repair your reputation, you would stop speaking to the media and all that stuff and stop doing all those weird, creepy things that you do off the field, like the Netflix documentary and all that stuff, and play ball. That's all I'm asking for here. You have a good running back. You have a wide receiver where there's a rumor that he might want out, which I kind of hope Garrett Wilson doesn't ask out. I think he's a really good wide receiver. But Sauce Gardner had a terrible year.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible year. And he was getting beat in the second half of the year, which is usually was not happening. So, one, he's got to get an attitude adjustment because he just gave up in the second half of the season. Now, I don't know anything about Mougey. I just know he was the assistant GM in Denver. They're starting to figure out things there, but is that really the system you want to take from? I don't really know. I really was hoping for an offensive guy. Like, I was begging that I don't know. Did Ben Johnson interview with the Jets? I don't even know.
I'm not sure, but I think even if he did, I think Ben Johnson would have probably wanted to go to the Bears. I think that was his top choice. But my question for you, Nick, if you don't agree with the Aaron Glenn hiring, of the guys that would have been considered for the Jets job, who would have been your choice over Aaron Glenn, if you wanted somebody else?
I mean, here's the problem. They interviewed like the whole world. So I have no idea who they wanted. They were just interviewing everybody. It was like a revolving door. Just like, all right, you want an interview? You want an interview? They even interviewed Jeff Albright, the guy who was the interim. I'm like, we knew he was never going to be the coach. Come on.
Even Rex Ryan, I heard, was considered.
I am so glad they did not make that move. I was jumping around doing the happy dance when they did not bring him in. Because he kept saying, oh, well, I know how to turn this team. Rex, you don't know how to turn a team around. You don't. All you know is how to play in New York. I'll give you that. You know how to handle the media, but you're not the right guy for this team at all. So I'm glad they got a top name if I have to pull something out of this. But usually, what do they say usually about defensive coordinators as head coaches? Usually. Do you know? They don't make the best head coaches, usually. Except for Bill Belichick. That's the one rarity who's won 6 rings.
I think definitely in today's NFL, you definitely want to have more of an offensive guy with the way the NFL is going, being more offensive and being centered around the quarterback. My last question for you, Nick, before we move on is, if Aaron Glenn gets this Jets defense playing like it did a year or two ago, and I know Aaron Rodgers wasn't prime Aaron Rodgers, but if you take a Jets defense from 2 years ago and you pair it with Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson, that might be, a team that can slide into the last playoff spot.
I think they can win 8 to 9 games if they can figure that out. I think that's their ceiling. You're not going to see them win double digits. Like, that's just not the team they are. Once you get into the playoffs, it's the wild, wild west. Anything could happen because it all depends on who warmed up well, who's playing well. It doesn't matter. But if you're saying that they could sneak in. I have to see it to actually believe it. If they're gonna get there, I don't trust Aaron Rodgers at all. I've sailed on that ship a long time ago. I didn't want him to come here. I didn't.
I guess the better question would be is if the Jets had the defense that they had 2 years ago, was Aaron Rodgers a good enough quarterback to take a defense like that to the playoffs?
Yes, I think they would, because if the defense was holding teams rather than giving up 20, 25 points, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be chasing nonstop to stay on the scoreboard.
I agree.
So basically, if Aaron Rodgers was 50% of himself and the defense was in the top 2 or 3, you might win 8 or 9 games and you might sneak into the playoffs. That's really, I think, the only way I can really look at it. But the jury's out on whether this is going to work. Speaking of odd situations, I'll let you answer this one, because when I saw this, I said, question mark?
Yeah, I was stunned. I mean, a couple of days before it became official, I saw Coward reacting to this, and I'm like, nah, no way. And then I saw that it wasn't official. I'm like, nah, this isn't going to come to fruition. And when I saw it did, like, my jaw dropped. I mean, this guy wasn't even really being considered for any other head coaching jobs. I mean, he was the offensive coordinator for the guy that you didn't want to re-sign. So what makes no sense is he's basically a poor version of Mike McCarthy, the guy that you ran out the building.
Yep.
So I think this is the worst hiring by far of any team. I'm not sure if Jerry Jones has lost it, if he's, if his ego is bigger than it ever is before, and he's just trying to get a guy that he could control. If you notice, he doesn't like to bring in head coaches that are going to try to have their own thing and try to tell Jerry Jones what to do. He likes to have a guy that he can control, where he can kind of run things himself. I mean, I know he's the owner, but it's almost like he's the owner, GM, and the head coach all in one. So I think that's probably why he decided to go with Bryant Schottenheimer. But I think this is a poor hire. I mean, he wasn't getting considered for any other jobs. And like I said, I really don't think he's all that great of an offensive coordinator to begin with.
I mean, I don't know if you remember when we did the Deion Sanders rumors to the Cowboys. Do you remember how I said how ridiculous those rumors are? And we put those clips up and they went viral. People were going after me, saying, oh, well, Deion will fit in with Jerry. He can tell Jerry what to do. The whole world knew Deion was not going to get the job. Come on. Did we really think that Deion was going to take over, be head coach, and Jerry was just going to roll over and just say, oh, all right, bow down to Deion Sanders. We'll let you have the job. You do what you want. No, that's the biggest load of shit I've ever heard in my life. It was never going to happen. Of course, Jerry Jones was going to pick a guy like Schottenheimer because he could control him. Plain and simple.
Maybe some Dallas Cowboys or NFL fans are hoping maybe after 30 years of not making it to the NFC Championship game that maybe Jerry Jones would finally change his ways and, lower his ego down a little bit. But now, by the looks of it, it looks like his ego's actually gotten bigger.
I agree. All he cares about is money. That's it. All he cares about
is Super Bowls, but...
Well, he says he cares about Super Bowls, but then he goes and says, oh, well, I need to make a giant move in the offseason. You signed Ezekiel Elliott, and that's your big move of the offseason. I mean, the Cowboys have a lot of signings still they have to do. Why am I forgetting his name? He's been in the news. What?
Micah Parsons?
Yes. So he's been in the news because I think his deal is up, if I'm not mistaken. And he wants a big contract, even though I don't think he's worth a big contract right now, because I think he's had injuries and he hasn't played well and all that stuff. But you got to sign him, right?
Oh, you have to. I mean, you could have your questions about his injuries, but when he's on the field, particularly obviously in the regular season, I mean, he comes to play. I mean, he may not be, as good as a Myles Garrett or TJ Watt, but he's pretty damn close. And he's definitely going to be worth top dollar. And when Dallas Cowboys already paid CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, how could you not pay Micah Parsons? I mean, it'd be a slap in the face if you paid the other two guys and not him.
You think the Cowboys are having buyer's remorse right now on Dak?
Potentially. I mean, $60 million is a lot for a quarterback that hasn't got to the NFC Championship game. I mean, I think he's a good quarterback, but to make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL by far, he definitely didn't deserve that.
And to go down with the injury, too, which that's a lot of money to have on your cap and not playing. But you and I are completely shocked by this move. Like, just, they needed to go out and get a name. Even for the brand's sake, they needed to go out and get a name, someone that they could put up there and say, you run the franchise. But until Jerry stops doing all his weekly radio show interviews and gives up the GM role because he's already the owner, this team's never going to change. It's going to be the same endless circle all over again. And
I like what Colin Cowherd said. He said he compares the Dallas Cowboys to the Los Angeles Lakers. He said if LeBron didn't go to the Lakers and get them a championship, they'd be pretty much in the same predicament as the Cowboys, where they're kind of ran by the family. They don't let anybody else, come in. It's all about their internal circle. They don't listen to any outside voices, and that's why you just keep getting this repetitive cycle with those organizations. But thankfully, one has LeBron. The Dallas Cowboys don't have a LeBron.
Well, who knows how much longer LeBron will be with the Lakers, but that's another story for another day. Speaking of other hires, this one kind of shocked me too. Pete Carroll being hired by the Raiders. I have an idea of why they might have done it. I think they were looking for veteran experience, probably at the head coaching role. They have a lot of work to do, though. And I think they're the second pick or the first.
No, I think they're the sixth pick right now because they actually finished the season, winning a couple of their last games.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, so they're in the top 10. So, which is all that matters, really, because the top 10 picks are the most important. They need a quarterback, number one. They have a lot of other issues, but I do like Brock Bowers. I think he's a really good player. I like Pete Carroll, too. But really? Pete Carroll with the Raiders?
I mean, I think, after having Antonio Pierce, who, didn't have a lot of head coaching experience, I think they wanted a guy who had, plenty of experience. And, with Tom Brady being, in, this and potentially, being involved in the coaching search, obviously he knows how great Pete Carroll is. I mean, he went against him in the Super Bowl before, and Pete Carroll does have a good track record. And what Pete Carroll's good at doing is he's really good at building teams up. I mean, whether if he could win a Super Bowl at this stage of his career is undecided. I'm not sure if he's that Super Bowl winning coach as he once was, but I definitely think he's the type of coach that can come in and rebuild your organization and at least get you competitive. I know Tom Brady's also going to help with the quarterback search as well, and Pete Carroll's really good with quarterbacks. I mean, look what happened. He had Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson looked like a Hall of Fame quarterback. He leaves, doesn't look like that Hall of Fame quarterback anymore, and now Geno Smith's going to the Pro Bowl. So Pete Carroll does a really good job at quarterbacks, and I think he'll do good with whatever quarterback they have. Obviously, the only bright spot they really have on offense is Brock Bowers. But, a young quarterback, their favorite thing is that safety blanket, that tight end. So I think that would help out a young quarterback. One thing that they're going to have to decide is what are they going to do with Max Crosby. He's got a huge salary cap, and obviously he's a huge, asset. He's their best player. But, they can trade him and get some assets for him and maybe help, accelerate that rebuild. So Pete Carroll definitely has some work to get done, but I do think he can get this team competitive within 2 to 3 years.
I mean, I was also going to say with Crosby, the injuries are a problem too, because he's had 2 or 3 major injuries already. So I don't know if they're going to be willing to sink the amount of money necessary into him. Would I? Yeah, he's a really good player. They need him. But I wouldn't blame them if they didn't want to spend millions upon millions of dollars to save him. Now, when I look at this franchise, they've been through a lot. They've been through a lot of different issues and stuff, but it's still going to take a long time for this franchise.
Yeah. I mean, and you look at their division. I mean, going forward, this division is going to get really, really interesting and tough. I mean, Kansas City's not going anywhere. Bo Nix and Denver is only going to get better with the more salary cap they get from the dead money from Russell Wilson. And obviously, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are only going to get better. So it's going to be a tough division to compete in.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm still going to say the jury's out on the Raiders right now, just because it's the Raiders. And the one statement I was going to make is, this is comparing to a baseball reference for a second, but the Raiders kind of remind me of the early 2000s Miami Marlins, where basically all they did was keep replenishing, but they never spent. So what would happen was they won a World Series in 2003, and then they sold everybody off. That's what they did, because they didn't care. They won their title, then they sold everything away for assets. That seems like what the Raiders are, even though they're not winning anything right now, but they're constantly going through a churner, basically, and saying, oh, well, we didn't win with them, but we might as well just get assets and keep redoing it. But how many times can you keep redoing until you don't win? So we'll see what happens. This next one was a little strange because there was a story of a viral video attached to this one, but Jaguars hire Liam Coen as their head coach. They fire GM Trent Baalke, which I think that was long overdue. The Liam Coen head coaching news conference was hilarious, right?
Oh yeah, it was jokes.
Yeah, I mean, him saying Duval was very
He's
bizarre.
trying to fit in.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's really fitting in. Well, why don't you explain the whole situation with Liam Coen? Because a lot of people don't understand the whole thing between the Bucks and then getting money and then getting money and then going dark. So maybe explain that so people understand.
Yeah, it's definitely a real complex situation. And obviously, we're never going to know the 100% truth because obviously, you know, there's one side and then there's the other side and then there's the truth. Well, we won't ever know the truth. But, you know, when we were looking at this, the Jaguars' top candidate, they wanted Liam Coen from the beginning. They wanted to get him really bad. They went out and tried their best to get him. And at the time, Trent Baalke was the GM. Liam Coen, they stated there was reports that he decided that he wanted to return and, you know, go back to the Buccaneers and be with Baker Mayfield another year. They also said that you know, for him coming back, the Buccaneers were willing to make him one of, if not the highest paid coordinator in the NFL for the fact that he turned down the Jaguars. Then next thing you know, a day later, Trent Baalke is fired, which Jaguars should have did that from the beginning because he's a coach killer and he hasn't been doing all that great drafting. And I feel like he's more of the problem than what the coaches have been. So they did the right thing and they should have fired him sooner. But then what's weird is after he got fired, now Liam Coen is now being the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's real interesting. And then the Jaguars are like, oh, no, the Trent Baalke firing had nothing to do with, the Liam Coen hiring. I think what happened is Liam Coen was like, you know, I'm not going to coach for a guy like Trent Baalke who gets coaches fired. And I think he decided he was going to go back to Tampa Bay. And I think the Jaguars looked at themselves and was like, you know what? We're not going to lose another great coach because of this, shitty GM. So they fired the GM. They did the right thing. And then they probably called Liam Coen and was like, hey, we got rid of the GM. We'll allow you to pick the GM. We'll give you total control. And we'll probably match, if not do better than the offer you got and make you one of the highest paid coaches. Now, it is risky because with the Jaguars putting all their chips in on Liam Coen, if this doesn't work, this is going to put them, you know, really far back. I know they're already one of the worst teams in the league. But the fact that they went all in on this guy, and with, you know, Trevor Lawrence being, you know, in the prime of his career, if this doesn't work, Trevor Lawrence's career is over. I mean, there's no way Trevor Lawrence is going to be able to go through another coach after this. I mean, this is it. So, you know, this coach has to make it work. And on the flip side, if it doesn't work for Liam Coen, if you're an NFL team, why would you want to bring this guy in as your offensive coordinator knowing that he could do you dirty? And if he gets another head coaching job, he can lie to you and go get that head coaching job. So I think this has to work for both the Jaguars and Liam Coen.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, like you brought up Trevor Lawrence, which I think a lot of people are not talking about enough. This guy's got to win. Like he's got to, I know he has a playoff victory, but he's got to improve and win more playoff games. This guy was paid like a lot of money, if I'm not mistaken, like $55 million a year. And so far he's digressed a little bit here. Like, so there's pressure on him too, by the way, to perform. But it also doesn't help that you keep getting new head coaches every year. You can't build into a system that way. So this seemed like a very dirty situation. Just like he was already being offered the most money as an offensive coordinator. And then the Jaguars come along and say, oh, we'll pay you much. We'll throw buckets of money at you to come. I did think it was kind of ridiculous, though. We offered you the contract. Don't take any more interviews. Goes dark and takes the interview. I was like, all right, that's like secret agent shit going on over here. So I don't know. That the Jaguars are not going to be good for a long time yet. The Jaguars and the Raiders are going to be at the bottom of the abyss for many years.
At least the Jaguars division is a little bit easier. But for Liam Coen, I mean, the jury's definitely out on him. Obviously, you know, he gave Baker Mayfield probably the best season Baker Mayfield's ever had. But Baker Mayfield at the end of the day is just a great quarterback, and he's talented. And Baker Mayfield has done great with multiple coordinators. So was it Baker Mayfield or was it Liam Coen? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady situation. Who needs who more? All right, moving on. Texans fire Bobby Slowik. The Texans you can't figure them out. Like, we just can't figure them out. Like, everyone says, oh, they're a great team. They're a great team. And then CJ Stroud just looks awful in the playoff game. And I don't know. How do you describe the Texans? I don't really know how to.
I really don't understand this firing. I mean, I know the offense struggled a little bit, but a lot of that may have to do with just CJ Stroud having that normal sophomore slump that we see out of a lot of great quarterbacks. And what sucks for Bobby Slowik is not obviously Ben Johnson was the top guy, but after what he did with the Texans and CJ Stroud, Bobby Slowik was one of those top 3 to 5 candidates coming into the season. I mean, it was almost a guarantee that he was going to be a head coach within a year or two. And I know the offense had a struggle, but it still had some good games. It had some good moments, and they still ultimately got to the same place as they did the season before. You still got to the second round of the playoffs. There's plenty of other coordinators who have done less, who have been able to keep their job. I think Bobby Slowik will probably get another, offensive coordinator job or at least a quarterback coach job, but I think he'll be rehired and be able to rebuild himself. But maybe the Texans, think that they need a change. I did read that there was some, bickering between him and CJ Stroud back in 2023. So maybe they just didn't see eye to eye, and maybe it just got to the point where they needed a change. So maybe him and CJ Stroud didn't get along. We'll never know, but I think Bobby Slowik can be a good coordinator in this league.
Yeah, but maybe we look at this year and say maybe CJ Stroud had a little decline this past season also. Like, he looked really good year one. Then he had the sophomore slump in year two. He's got to play better. Sometimes his field view is not great. He makes some bad throws. I don't know why I'm forgetting the running back's name off the top of my head. Who was it? Who was it?
Joe Mixon?
Oh, Mixon was incredible this year. When he was not hurt, he had a really, really good year and really kept that team afloat. But again, you can't win on running backs all year. It just doesn't. We're a quarterback league.
Plus, the receivers were hurt.
Well, that didn't help either. That they had all those injuries with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And was there other injuries?
Diggs?
Oh, yeah, Stephon Diggs lost for the year. That was a big deal. Even though he really wasn't doing a whole heck of a lot on the field.
He was doing pretty good before his injury, and then Tank Dell started to pick it up, and then he got hurt. So, I mean, how many games did the Texans, play this year where they had all 3 of those guys perfectly healthy?
Not many. And that Tank Dell injury was scary.
Oh, yeah. Too. I hope he makes a full recovery.
Yeah. I mean, there was a rumor saying that he might not play again, which I hope is not the case. He's a really good player. But this doesn't surprise me. Usually when a team struggles offensively, the quarterback usually has a say in who they want, and that's kind of what happened here. All right. From the NFL coaching carousel to Jimmy Butler drama. So this is getting tiresome. And I'm a huge NBA guy. You're a huge NBA guy. This is just getting ridiculous already. We all know he doesn't want to be there anymore. We all know that he's trying to find his way out. But Pat Riley is a no bullshit guy. He's not old school, to the point of old school. We talked about it over the last couple of weeks. He basically flew private away from the team, which made no sense. He's getting fined. He's getting suspended many games. I'm surprised the NBA PA has not stepped in to say, why is he getting suspended? But
Nick, did you see why he got suspended again?
I didn't see the whole reason why. It was a conduct detrimental. That's usually what it is.
So the reason why he got suspended again, and this just happened like a day or two ago, real recently. He was in shoot-arounds, and they went up to him and they said, "Yeah, Jimmy, with everything going on, going forward, we're going to have you come off the bench." Well, he just walked out the facility.
I didn't know he walked out. Wow.
So they suspended him again.
I mean, I get athletes have an ego, but come on, man. Like, the team is paying you. You do what the team says. Like, he's kind of become that role anyway. I never really saw him as like the huge, gigantic star. And I didn't realize he walked out of the facility. That's bad. Like, he deserves to be suspended if he walked out of the facility.
Oh, yeah. And like I said before, Nick, I know, this is the third week in a row because speaking about Jimmy Butler, because this story just continues each and every week. But, with Jimmy Butler, he could have handled this a lot better. He's got to be a better leader for those guys in the locker room and a better teammate. He definitely handled this like shit. But I want to say, too, he hasn't got that co-star. I know they got Bam, but he hasn't got that elite co-star scorer to go alongside him. And, he has been carrying this Miami Heat franchise for a long time. Like I said before, he practically put this team on his back and carried them to 2 NBA finals. So in terms of winning and playing good, when it comes to the playoffs, Jimmy Butler has done everything he can for this organization. But he's handled it in a poor way. We talked about Josh Allen. Look what Josh Allen does. When Kincaid makes that drop, where does he go? He doesn't blame Kincaid. He takes the blame himself. And for a guy who could be as frustrated as anybody, Josh Allen still takes the blame and won't blame his teammates and will still be there. Jimmy Butler's not handling it that same way. And like I said, I know he's done everything he can for the franchise as a player, but he's probably not done everything he can as a franchise as a teammate or a leader.
I find it funny. So I found an article which lays out the exact technical reasons why he's out. And I laugh when the team comes up with these reasons. So it says the team is calling it intentionally withholding services. What? Intentionally withholding? Just say he walked out of the facility. What? Really? We're going to make this technical now? So it says the suspension is without pay and indefinite. So they're claiming it's indefinite, which means he's gone until they decide otherwise. But it says with the team saying it will last at least 5 games. Butler was expected to come back from his second suspension this week, only to be suspended for a third time. Butler, according to a person with knowledge of the situation, was told during the shoot-around that he was not going to be in the starting lineup, like you said. He left the shoot-around not long afterwards. That the person who spoke to the AP on condition of anonymity because the team did not release the detail. And then, I love when they do this too. Miami tweeted out the reasons why he's suspended. Like, why do we have to double down on a player when they act stupid? Like, now you wonder why some of these guys get upset when the team does something. So it says here, Miami Heat are suspending Jimmy Butler without pay. Then it says the suspension is due to continued pattern of disregard of team rules, engaging in conduct detrimental to the team, which is the term I was expecting, and intentionally withholding services. This includes walking out of practice.
And I heard this guy's suspension is going to cost him a good buck. I'm hearing multi-millions he's going to lose in the suspension, like $2 million.
Well, yeah. I think he's playing for what, $50+ million this year. And he's got an option for, if I'm not mistaken, close to $55 million.
Well, he's making close to probably $400,000 to $500,000 a game. So you said 5 games. That will get us close to around that $2 million mark. And I also saw reports that because of this situation, getting so bad, Miami Heat has ramped up, trades. And maybe this might force the trade a lot sooner. And they might just have to take pennies on the dollar just to cut ties with him because the situation is only going to keep getting worse until they do ultimately trade him.
Okay, so he's making almost $49 million this year. That's a lot of money. Like you said, and I think I said it last week, just trade him. Just rip the Band-Aid, bite the bullet. You got to get rid of him. He's a cancer in the locker room. Like, he doesn't want to be there. So just take what you can get, even if it's salary cap relief, which is a huge thing in this sport. Just make the deal. Just make the deal.
The one team I heard maybe is the Warriors.
The Warriors, we talked about Phoenix last week, but they would have to trade Beal, which is much more difficult with the no trade clause. The Warriors are not really in win now mode, though.
Well, they probably think if they could get Jimmy Butler, they could probably at least, if they could get into the playing tournament, anything's possible. You win a game or two and you're in the playoffs, and like you said, it's the Wild Wild West.
It is the Wild Wild West. But the difference is you have long-term series in the NBA.
Which makes the NFL where every game's a game 7.
Right. So would it be a good move to put someone with Steph Curry maybe for the next couple of years? But here's the problem. He goes to Golden State, and then he gets disgruntled again. What happens then? The guy's never going to be happy. Like, it reminds me a little bit of Kyrie Irving, a little bit, even though Kyrie Irving, it looks like he's found a home in Dallas, finally. But I don't trust Jimmy Butler anymore at all. I don't think he's a number one option anymore. I think he's going to have to fit in on a team as a 2 or a 2A, B, somewhere in there, and just got to play. Just play basketball. And, excuse me, it also reminds me a little bit of James Harden, too. But it seems like James Harden has finally found a home in LA with the Clippers. But remember James Harden's situation, how bad that got for a long period of time? He was showing up fat and out of shape, and because he didn't want to play in Philadelphia. And the NBA is a weird sport when it comes to stars, because they basically could just say, I'm out of here. Don't do anything with me anymore. And unless you trade me, then you're stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the only people in the NFL that could do that are quarterbacks.
It's true. But quarterbacks have more leverage, I feel like, than in any other sport. All right. Also, in the NBA, this one just shocked me. NBA exploring a separate Euro League. So I had to double take on this quite a few times. And I told you before we started recording, there's only one thing I can really think of for why they want to do this. And when you have guys like Jokic, and you have guys like Wembanyama, who are huge stars internationally, they want to create a league for international players, which are considered part of the NBA. And I don't like it. I think it's a terrible idea. Why don't you just focus on promoting the NBA and growing that instead?
Yeah, or at least promoting the G League. Because ultimately, I mean, if this Euro League is a huge success, obviously, you're going to want, those players that play really good. NBA teams are probably going to be like, hey, that guy did really good in the Euro League. Let's bring him over here. So it's almost going to be like another, international version of the G League, where it's going to be players who aren't necessarily good enough to make the NBA, but they are still really good players. My thing is, I thought the NBA, unless they're thinking about doing both, would be expanding it. I would love to see the NBA expand to 32 teams, maybe potentially get a team in Vegas or bring back the Seattle Supersonics or put a team somewhere else. But I would like the NBA to expand. I also heard a couple months ago that LeBron and Rich Paul and his people want to start their own separate league. I'm not sure if that's going to be a collaboration, or maybe LeBron has his own Euro League and the NBA has their own Euro League, and we just have all these Euro Leagues competing with each other for the top talent, for the best players that are not good enough to make the NBA. It's going to be interesting to see what the future entails for this.
I mean, it's kind of like the WNBA, and Unrivaled is another way to look at it too, where Unrivaled was created so that the WNBA players don't have to go overseas and risk their lives to make more money for the WNBA, for the salaries. The salaries are so bad in the WNBA. The NBA, they don't have this issue. This is more of competition, I guess, is really the way to look at it, more than money. Because you're not going to see NBA players go to the Euro League. They already make enough money to suffice being in the NBA. Now, the NBA has an issue with declining ratings and all of that stuff, and they haven't figured that out. So I'm wondering if this is Adam Silver saying, well, my ratings are declining. I need to find another way to make money and get the ratings back up. I don't know. I'm not a fan of this at all. I think this is Adam Silver grasping at straws a little bit. And it says here, Silver still has to convince his bosses, the 30 team owners, to greenlight this venture, which I doubt you're going to get enough owners, majority-wise, to greenlight this, right?
Yeah, I don't think definitely not all the owners are going to be on board, I don't think, with this.
So it says multiple ownership sources told ESPN there's still many questions and uncertainties about the plan that have to be answered before it can be ratified. An issue for the owners is these other leagues the NBA operates have not been routinely profitable. So that's another issue, too. If they're not going to make any money, what are the owners going to say? F you, I'm out of here. I'm not doing that. So, but you look at the places like Paris, where Wembanyama came out of, or Russia, or all these places where they're getting a lot of these big names to come over to the NBA. I just don't see how this is going to work. I just don't see the growth in this, or this potential really working out. So, and the NBA has been playing games in England, in Berlin, in Paris. We just saw Wembanyama go back to Paris to play 2 games. That was kind of cool, by the way. But it's not enough to turn the needle to get those ratings back up, which the NBA is declining in. So we'll have to see what happens. All right, last topic. We saved this for last. January 26th was the 5th anniversary of Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gigi, and a bunch of other. I think there was his coach, one of the coaches from childhood, a bunch of other guys on there. They were flying to a game, if I'm not mistaken, right, on a helicopter. And unfortunately, it went down and it crashed. And it was a huge story when it happened. What do you make of it being 5 years since he passed away?
Yeah, it feels like it was just yesterday. I mean, it's crazy how much time has passed, and it's just unfortunate. What had to happen. Kobe Bryant, and his daughter. Obviously, like you said, they were on their way to the game. Obviously, Kobe Bryant was a great man. He was a great NBA player, but he was also a great person, and he was a great father as well. And obviously, his daughter was very talented. She was very smart, and she had her whole life in front of her, and she was probably going to have a very successful career no matter what she did. So it's very unfortunate, and my condolences and my heart and prayers go out to the family. Obviously, in particularly, most importantly, Kobe Bryant's wife and the mother of the daughter that passed away. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers are with her. I can't imagine how hard this has to be. Obviously, her world was changed forever, and I hope she gets the support that she needs. And I'm glad that we can continue to remember Kobe Bryant and his daughter and the great light that we do, because like I said, they were some of the best people in the world. And for what Kobe Bryant did, for me being born in 1997, I started getting into basketball in the late 2000s. And if you're born around the same time period as me, you started getting into basketball in the late 2000s, that was when Kobe Bryant was dominating and winning championships with the Los Angeles Lakers. And he was doing it without Shaq and proving that he could win a championship by himself as the main guy. And ever since then, I've always, idolized Kobe. And even though I'm a LeBron guy, I think Kobe is one of the all-time greatest players that has ever played. He was super, super smart. I mean, the guy could speak multiple different languages. I mean, he was fluent in Italian. He's obviously fluent in English. Because his dad was an overseas basketball player, Kobe Bryant moved around a lot. So he was able to be really smart and learn a bunch of different languages. So, I mean, everything he accomplished, I mean, you can't say anything wrong about him. He's a 5-time champion, one of the 5 all-time greatest players in NBA history. And I'm glad that we get to remember him in such a great light because he was a great human being.
Yeah, I mean, also Oscar winner. People forget that, by the way, which is incredible. This guy had many, many talents. I think he had a production company with all this different content that he was working on. His big thing was the girl dad phase that really went around, which ended up being a huge thing after he passed away. He coached his daughter and I think the girls' team, if I'm not mistaken, also. Like, that was a big thing that he was into. He will always be one of the best I've ever watched. You were born in 97. I was born in 93. So we were around in the prime, or like either the beginning or to the beginning of his prime. So we got to see amazing basketball out of this guy. Of course, I'll never forget the 81-point performance against the Raptors. That was always I watched that game. Actually, I still remember because that was a year where he basically was carrying the team. If I'm not mistaken, like, they had nobody, like absolutely no one. He just had to shoot the ball nonstop. But people were saying, like, oh, he could have scored 100 points that game. Like, it would have been, I think it was the second highest game behind Wilt Chamberlain, who had 100 points in a game. So this guy did it all. Also, it's Kobe Bryant fashion on his last game to score 60 points. Now, I know he did it on 50 shots. I get it, but still 60 points. Like, for you to go out in your retirement and score 60 points is just an incredible feat. And, like, he's won his titles. Kobe and Shaq will always be remembered together. But I don't know if Shaq wins those titles without Kobe. Like, Kobe was the leader in every way, shape, or form. And then Shaq leaves. It's Kobe's team. They go on to win another title. Him and Pau Gasol, which that was an incredibly, I think that was the Lakers Celtics year I think. That was an incredible finals. By the way, I still remember that finals. But no one will ever be Kobe. Now, did Kobe have a little bit of his flaws? Yes. People will always remember Denver and the issue he had in Denver. But people make mistakes. People make mistakes. We're all human. It happens. But he's done a lot of good for the world. He's done a lot of good for wanting to train like his daughter and other girls to be great players eventually in the WNBA. And if I'm not mistaken, he had a relationship. Who was it with in the WNBA? I can't remember. Was it Ionescu? I think was the one that he had the relationship with.
It could have been.
And they got along. Like he would talk to her every day. Like so he just meant a lot to not just the basketball community, but to a lot of people to grow and become better as a person. I still can't believe it's 5 years since he passed away. I remember the news cycle just completely going crazy the day that it was broke because nobody knew who was on the helicopter at all. Like people were making these speculations. Was he on the helicopter? Was his daughter on the helicopter? It was a whole thing. So rest in peace to Kobe. And we're going to talk about this for years, like, because he was just that guy. When this date comes up, everyone's going to talk about it. So rest in peace, Kobe, and career will never be forgotten that way. So that'll do it for episode 264 of Empty the Bench. Make sure you follow us on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. We are under 100 subscribers away from 1,000, so please help us out there. Hit and the subscribe button and help us grow that number. Listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts. So on Apple, Spotify, YouTube Premium, we're all there as well. Obviously, Empty the Bench presented by Playback. Check out our Playback platform. We are going to be doing some more games, NBA mostly right now, but there's some other stuff in the works. So just go to our page, playback.tv/ETB Network as well. Follow our show on social media at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So please check us out there. Check out the full network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well. So make sure you check all that out. Whew. All right. Anything else left to say, Anthony, before we put a bow on this episode?
It was a great NFL week. Obviously, I wish Bills would have won, but obviously the Chiefs are the team to beat. I think ultimately we'll end up with a great Super Bowl, and I think all the fans will be excited to see Saquon Barkley and the Eagles go up against Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's going to be part 2 of the game that we got 2 years ago. The first matchup was exciting. I expect the second one to be equally as exciting.
Yeah, and since we have the week off in between, we'll get into Super Bowl, was it 59? Yeah, 59. So we'll get into Super Bowl 59, and we'll break it down a little, not too much, but we'll go into it, and then you'll see us on Forecast at the end of the week for the live stream to check everything out. So that'll do it for episode 264. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Have a good week, everybody, and we will see you next week for episode 265. Have a good day, everyone.